Welcome to Coaching in Session,
where limits end and growth begins.
Hosted by Michael Rearden.
This is your space to challenge the ordinary,
unlock your potential,
and step boldly into your next chapter.
Your mindset journey continues.
Welcome, Estelle Gibson and Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thank you so much for having me today.
Of course. We're going to be talking about your work today. You are a speaker, author, and holistic financial coach, and more of that to come. And I just find it amazing how people today in our world, they do not live to their fullest capabilities, whether it be in their own career life, family life, whatever you want to call it life. They're always living below. And I just ask myself, why? Why are we in this mindset of being poor? Basically a pun to your book, Poor by Choice, right? A poor mindset, a poor, poor financial literacy, poor academics in school. We can go down the list of this mindset of just average, of just comfortable. And today I want to raise the bar to all the listeners that are going to be tuning in. And then, of course, for anyone who's joining for the first time, to challenge you today to think more in a higher frame of mindset. And this is going to be the premise of our conversation today. But before we do that, I would love to get to know a little bit more about you, Estelle. Can you tell us who you are, what you do, and of course, how you help people?
Great. So I'm Estelle Gibson. I'm a CPA. I've had 40 plus years as a certified public professional. And about 20 years ago, based on a situation in my life, I went down the path of spiritual and self-development. And then that got me into the coaching realm. So I've been doing that for about 20 years. And then I've always been a presenter, and then got into speaking and was in Toastmasters, and then ended up doing a TED Talk. Out of that TED Talk came my book, Poor by Choice. And so that's about my personal story and my struggle throughout my life with money. And also it's a primer on the basic saving, investing, credit, debt. And it's a way for people to learn information. And you just spoke to it a minute ago, Michael, that people don't know about money because we don't talk about it and we don't teach about it. So that's one of the things I want to get my message out, so that people can have financial peace, that no matter what your circumstance, you can shift it and you can create the life that you love.
So there's so many paths that we can go down when we're talking about finances. We can begin from when we're young dealing with money, or we can begin when we are 18 to 21 era and becoming adults, and we're getting our first credit cards or maybe buying our first home. Which path would you like to walk down?
We can walk down any of them, but overarching, Michael, is money beliefs and money stories that start when you're young and travel with you because you're not even aware of it. So we can start there because that is where everything flows from. So let's start at the beginning.
All right. Well, that is so important. Let's start at the beginning. I was just thinking of the end. Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. And I said, wow, that's so powerful. And I talked to a lot of parents that do a lot of family consulting for parents. And these are affluent parents where they don't necessarily see money as a problem, a burden. It's just one of those things that they can not have to worry about. And what I've noticed with their children is that their children have no concept of money whatsoever. They don't know what anything costs, or they don't even deal with money hands-on. I remember when I was some of their kids' ages from, 9 to their teenagers, I would get money for my birthday. And I did not do the right thing when I was young. I went there and I bought candy. I said, I'm going to go to the store. And I'm going to buy candy. I'm going to buy all things. I didn't know anything about saving. I didn't know anything about investing. And it wasn't until maybe 18, 19 when I started to do those things. And my parents didn't know any better. We grew up poor. And this is not to say that they couldn't have learned. It's just that they didn't know. And then it passed on to me of me not knowing. And now my son today and my daughter today, they're already starting that process of learning how to save, invest, to give, and they're very young. So this is all to talk about when it's the right age to teach a child about financial literacy. Is it all by example, or is it all by discipline?
Okay, so a couple things. First of all, I want to address the rich people versus poor people. So here's the thing, and this is one of the reasons I started this whole thing. I had gone through a divorce and had to rebuild my life financially and emotionally. So I'm in a community of people that are struggling and self-development, and they want to use their gifts and talents to make a difference in the world, and they're struggling with money. I'm also in the world of finance where there's people with a lot of money. And what I found was that they both had the same emotional issues. People that have a lot of money, they worry about losing it. They worry about keeping it. They have the same stressors. People that don't have money, they worry about getting it. So they're all living in fear, and nobody's having financial freedom. So that's when I started this whole thing. So those two communities, you just never know what people are, thinking and going about. And let's start back when, how young, I mean, you've got to be conscious enough to understand concepts, but my dad started teaching me stuff about money at 8 years old. So it can be that early, it can be that young, 5 to 8 years old. And here's the thing, because we don't talk or teach about money, people learn about money based on what they observe, they hear, see, and absorb from their environment. So that can be poor and rich. And so in a wealthy family, you don't know what the conversations are, what they're seeing, if there's any angst, if there's any, even if it's nonchalantness, that is a story that those young people are adopting. And they don't even know it. They're just gonna, be acting out of it. And it can be, something like they're used to be given everything. And when they have to work, then it's, now they've got issues because now they've got to learn how to earn, save, spend, so the issues follow you based on the environment. And there's 4 levels, Michael. The level of society, the society that we're born into, because the United States versus another country versus the third world country, some countries are still bartering, okay? So dependent on the society that we live in, there are certain beliefs about money, credit, debt, all of that go along with it. Then there's the community. It can be your geographical community. It can be your church community. It can be your school community. Now it's your online community. Let's think about all the people that are watching the influencers and seeing what looks to be a certain way, but isn't. And what are they taking from that? And what are they aspiring to be? Then it's the family, based on the family that you lived in, whether you argued about money, whether you felt like you had to work hard for money or have your own business, all of those things create another level. And then your personal level, whether you've been bankrupt, divorced, had a business, lost a business, all of those. So now we got 4 levels. And this is why people they just behave out of their way of being from all of this that's running underneath and nobody is even paying attention to or talking about it. So then they just act out of all of that.
Yeah. Now, when we have all these 4 different levels,
yes,
where is the right place to begin? Because if we are living in America, should we only focus about American issues or should we start to look at things more globally?
And that is actually a personal preference. But the first key is awareness, just having the awareness that, oh my gosh, I behave like this because of that. Then you have the power to choose. Michael, if you don't even know that, you're not choosing, you're just acting, you're just, and the beliefs that you have about global stuff is based on all of that. What was happening in your family, what you hear on the news, what you tune yourself into. So having the awareness that this is what's going on, then I can now choose, I'm not going to agree with that. I can, and you spoke about beginning with the end in mind. Now we can go to the end in mind. What is the dream that I have for my money? What is the definition of financial freedom and financial peace for me? But you can't get there if all this is in the background, because you'll start and you'll end up where, where you're beginning because you don't even know that's going on, but it's running things.
Right. Well, let's use American culture or society as our conversational point of focus today. I think it's going to really help the listeners understand, okay, we're talking about America, because to do it globally, I think would be very challenging unless we did it separately, because we can separate 2 different aspects, I think, in American culture. We can separate the family aspect and we can separate the educational aspect, because in the family, a mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, whoever in the family can teach any of their children, grandchildren about money, right? When they were ready, from 5 to 8 or around that age point, where in schools, they're lucky. They're lucky if they get a teacher that talks to them about investing or any type of financial literacy. It's just not built into curriculum. So if parents don't do it and the schools don't do it, it's up to that child later on to figure it out for themselves. And by that time, they missed out so many years of compounding where they can say, I could have started when I was 8.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting when I'm 18 or I'm 28, and they feel as if they're behind. And one of the mindsets that happen when people, they get up in age and they realize they wasted 10, maybe even 20 years of saving or investing, they go, well, what's the point now?
Well, it's never too late.
Mm-hmm.
It's never too late unless you don't figure you're going to live more than 5 years. If you've got, and we're right. I mean, let's think about it. And you're talking about compound interest. Depending on what the interest rate is, your money can double every 7 to 10 years, right? So it's never too late, especially if you've got 10, 20, 30 years ahead of you're 60 years old, you're going to live till 90. You're 50 years old, you're going to live till 70 or 80. It's never too late to start. It is best if you start earlier, for sure, but it's never too late.
Right. Well, it's more of the mindset, because if you ask anybody, hey, what is your 5-year plan? They couldn't tell you, let alone 10-year plan.
Yeah, that makes me sad.
So it's like they have no vision for their future. They're not saving for a rainy day. They're not saving for anything. They might be saving up for something. I'm saving for my vacation to Florida. I'm saving for this TV or this PlayStation or this new computer or this new tech gadget or iPhone. It's where they want the instant gratification. They want the materialistic things, and they don't necessarily think about the things later on that if they, maybe for lack of a better word, sacrifice to an extent today, or just gave more focus or deliberateness on their money, then they can say, hey, my money's working for me rather than me working for my money. And so many people are just stuck in this rat race of life. They work paycheck to paycheck and they don't have any way out because they're not giving themselves that mindset of, let me start building the ladder. A lot of people think, all right, I'm just going to automatically summon a ladder. But if you think about it, you're going to need 2 sticks. You're going to need a bunch of little sticks, some string, some yarn, and you're going to start one step at a time. And before you know it, you have a ladder. And most people don't realize that it takes time to build the ladder, especially if they have dug a huge hole, whether it be because of debt or it be because of poor mindsets. They have to get out of that way of thinking. So maybe my question now would be, if someone is thinking on that barometer of, well, this is just my day to day, this is my rat race, I don't have any extra money to invest or to save or to even work with, they're just living paycheck to paycheck, what would be your advice to them?
That's where I start with the method I use. We got to get people to have a big dream. What's the dream of your life? Because, Michael, if you don't have something pulling you forward, you're just going to be in the day-to-day rat race. But opening their mind, and unfortunately for a lot of people, something has to, I find that something happens. Somebody dies, they get into big debt. Then they're like, okay, now I got to figure it out. Now I got to do something. And we don't want to wait till then. So that's where I love to talk to people like you about educating people. You don't have to wait, but you do have to have some incentive, whether, so I have people start thinking about, we start there. We got to start with the dream, because I have to have you at least 5 years. We got to start at least 5 years out and then work backwards. Okay, what is a 1-year milestone and what's the next 90 days based on the dream that you have in your life? And then I also have people think about, this is a new concept I'm bringing to people. What's in your center? What's in the center of your life? So a lot of people, it's their job or it's their kids or it's their, whatever it is. But then we have to look at, is that the dream? And we now have built our life around getting to the job. It's the rat race, all of that, all of the routines, the clothes you wear, everything is built around that thing in the middle. And if you can put your dream in the middle, and then you can start building out the support, the finances, the whatever for the dream. So we got to get people dreaming again. And they're just not focused on that. But that's the first step, is we've got to get to, what does financial freedom mean to you? Does it mean you're not going to work? Does it mean you can help others? Does it mean you can take care of your family? Does it mean you can leave a legacy? So what is your definition of financial freedom and wealth? What does that mean to you? And we've got to get people thinking about that, because otherwise they'll just stay in that, dysfunctional cycle.
Mm-hmm. There's a study, and I don't know the numbers exactly because it's been so long since I looked at it, there's a study done with children where they used marshmallows or just candy in general, where they said, okay, we're going to give you 1 marshmallow right now, or you can wait an hour and we'll give you 2 marshmallows, right? And they'll say, oh, in 2 hours I can get 2 marshmallows, or 1 hour I can get 2 marshmallows. And they're like, okay, that's a good deal. Some kids are like impatient. They're like, oh no, I want my marshmallow now, so I don't care about the other one. But then they started to make it a little bit longer. So instead of 1 hour, it's 5 hours in one day, 1 week. And basically the number was starting to go down, where people are like, wait, why do I have to wait a week to get this? And then, of course, the people who did wait, they got a bigger surplus of marshmallows at the end of it. And, we just live in this instant gratification world where the incentive is you want it now, you get it quick, 2 day shipping from Amazon, same day delivery from your grocery store. You don't even have to leave your house. There's so much convenience there. And for someone to put money away or to invest money to wait for it to grow, whether it be in a year or 5 years from now, we have a hard time associating with, waiting versus our mindset of instant gratification. So we want our money to be quicker. So this is why a lot of people, they'll play the lotto, they'll go to the casinos and gamble, because they have this anticipation of, I would rather do it quicker than more of a meticulous, methodical way, saying this is a surefire way for me to be financially free versus me trying to get lucky. And a lot of people, they base their dreams off of luck. Oh, it would be nice if this happened to me. My dream is this. But then it's a far-fetched dream because they go to the casino, they don't win. They play the lotto, they don't win. And at some point, the subconscious mind starts to think, well, maybe my dream is not plausible. It's not going to happen. So they don't even try anymore. What do we say to those people who are basically looking for the shortcut?
There is no shortcut, because how many lottery winners do you know don't have any money? Because here's the thing. If you can't manage $100, you can't manage a 10,000, 100,000, or 100 million. And so we have to get to the root of what is this impetus to self-gratify. And so for me, I have my clients do what I call permissive thoughts journaling. So if it's somebody that's in debt or if somebody's spending too much before, and they're committing, they're like, I'm not going to spend, but then they do. So before they spend, the protocol is before you make the spend, you've got to stop, not do it. And then you've got to write down what you're telling yourself that makes it okay, because you've already committed that you're not going to do it, because it's something, it's actually my theory, Michael, is that people don't want money. They want what the money provides. And that's an intangible, whether it's security or safety or joy or excitement or whatever that is, they're looking for money to provide it. And then when it doesn't, that's why they got to go buy something else. So we've got to get to the root of what is the thing I'm looking for. What is the experience, the feeling, the whatever, because you can get that usually somewhere else, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. So Estelle, you and I are working together, and I'm one of your clients, and I have, a decent amount of money. And I basically rely on you to stop me from making foolish purchases. So I say, Estelle, can I afford this? Can I afford this vacation to Rome? And what is your answer?
Well, that is a multifaceted. Well, if you weren't with me, you've already looked at what's your dream, what is meaningful to you, and what are the priorities in your life for your money, and does that fit in? Because if we don't start, Michael, with the intention for the dream or the goal, and then come up with, well, what are some of the money things we want, and you don't prioritize that, that's when you're like, yeah, I'll take the vacation. But if you had a priority that you wanted to buy a home. So which one is it? We have to have that conversation about, it's not about, do I have enough money? Is this where I want to direct my money?
Powerful.
And that's where people get caught, because then they get, they don't have a priority. And so they go over here, and then they can't ever make it over here because they keep going in the direction separate from where they said they were going.
There's this comedian who, he makes quite a bit of money. He has a podcast, who's highly successful in his career, his movies, etc. And he basically got to the point where he got a CPA, financial advisor, where he was like, I don't want to know how much money I have. I just want you to give me my card, and I want all my bills and everything taken care of. And if there's any big decisions I want to make, I'm going to run it by you. This is basically what he wanted. He didn't want to have to deal with the money. And so years go by, maybe 5-10 years go by, and he goes to his financial advisor, and he's like, do I have enough money for the rest of my life? Because it's one of those questions, getting older now. And the financial advisor is like, you're good. That's all he said. He's like, you're good. So basically, he didn't want the stress of money. And the stress of money can be that you don't have enough, you need more, etc. And for him, he just didn't want to deal with the stress. And I can't imagine how many people are probably in the same mindset as that individual, saying, I just don't want to deal with it. I just want to know that I have enough. Because maybe if they look at their bank accounts, maybe it's something like, oh, I have extra, I can get something extra, versus do I have enough? Like, that's all I need to know. So it's a different mindset now, because you're dealing with someone who wants to be hands off from dealing with it. And of course, I always tell people, at least every quarter, you should be talking to your CPA, your financial advisor, figuring out how things are going. Don't be full hands off. But again, this idea of they don't want to have to look at their bank account, crunch the numbers to make sure they have enough for rent or for food or for things along those lines. It's like how much freedom would you recommend someone who's afraid to look at their money?
Well, the first thing is that you better have somebody that you trust, because those situations, we've seen many of them, don't turn out well. Because somebody just takes their money. So I always tell people, and I met with a business owner once that was like, I don't want to know anything. And I'm like, look, understanding your money, especially if a business, gives you decision-making power. And so if somebody doesn't want to know, I say you don't have to be an expert, but you need to be informed. Even like you said, Michael, quarterly, even if it's, you're okay. First of all, you got to trust that person implicitly. And I think I would want to set up some parameters, like, if we're getting close to, for me, there would need to be some kind of boundaries. Like, when do you want to know when you've gotten this much? And when do you want to know when you're getting too low? Or when, you know what I mean? Let's set some boundaries so that I got to get definition of when you want to be involved. But not paying attention is, for people that don't have a lot of money, they don't want to pay attention, because for people that spend a lot, they don't want to know. That's one of the reasons they don't do it, is because if it doesn't exist, then I don't have to worry about it. And if I don't see, one of the exercises I do with people with credit, oh my gosh, they have so much anxiety. They're like, I'm like, all you have to do, we don't have to do anything but just write down the numbers. How much we need to get a total of what you owe. And they don't want to they just want to avoid it, because then it means something. First of all, guilt, shame, all that, like, how did I do this? And then, oh no, that means I can't spend any more, or it means I can, and I have to decide. So, awareness, just understanding, is the first step for all of this, and not, having your head in the clouds. Now, if somebody wants to not pay attention and they've got somebody they trust and they can do it, that's an agreement they can have. But they need to have some information. What happens if something happens to that person? Now what?
Right. You're in big trouble. And you have to be able to know this. And this happens a lot in marriages, where like the husband or the wife will be in charge of all the money. Something unfortunately happens to one or the other person, and now they're, given the journal entries, and they're like, oh wait, we didn't have any money, or we have all this money is not being utilized properly.
Now I don't know what to do with it.
Exactly. So then if that person doesn't have any financial literacy, then it's like, what do we do with that money? So a big inheritance, for example, where you get some homes or you get some money, it's like you're gifted or given this money. And a lot of times it's very similar to the lotto, where they will just spend it all because they just don't know how to deal with it. And it was so funny, because I remember when I was like, how old was I? I was like 18, 19, around there, 20, where I got in a car accident, and it was like a lump sum win of like $12,000, right? And I was pretty decent with money. I was investing. I was working a financial advisor at the time. And it was so funny, because I knew about money and I heard all the things about money. It's like, oh, I know how to operate with money. And it's so funny, because I lost most of that money. And it's just like, so I had to lose it in order to know not to lose it again. So I was like,
right. You learned the lesson.
I had to learn the lesson the hard way, because it's so funny, because when you're that age, like 18, 19, 20, it's just like, even though you give yourself this idea of, I know what to do, I'm not going to do the wrong thing, and you still do the wrong thing, you're like, ooh, ouch. It's very similar to, you can see the stove is on, you can see that it's cooking your food, don't touch the stove is hot. And then some people, they just have to get burned. And I was one of them. I was like, I have to get burned. But it was a life lesson for me. And most people, when they fall upon money later on in life, it's a life lesson for them. And sometimes they dig a hole so deep, it's just like, man, what were you thinking? Think of people who go to college, $500,000 in student loan debt, and then they have credit card debt, and they just have so much where now they have to start the process of paying off this back. And it's basically a mountain that they have to deal with. And I wanted to, ask, like, if someone has so much debt where it's just like, wow, like this is like too much for me, should they just kind of remain poor by choice and say, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just going to die one day. It's still going to be there. Someone else can deal with it. Or should it be, let's tackle it?
Well, it's really a personal choice. And a lot of people will claim bankruptcy, but then they get bankrupt again, Michael. I mean, it's just, so we have to get to the underlying, what is going on? How did we get here? And then what are you choosing to do? If you want to just keep paying the $5 minimum, I actually run the numbers for people. Like, if you keep paying the minimum, you really are going to be paying like $500,000 on that $30,000 credit card. So, I think once they see some of the information, like, oh my God. And the other thing is to show them that if you just pay more, how quickly it can really turn around, fairly quickly. The minimum payment will keep you there forever. I mean, the bank, that's what they want. So when people learn that if they can shift some of the money that they have and make some payments, or if they're going to claim bankruptcy, you got to have a plan. Because it's very easy. I've seen people bankruptcy. I've seen people get the loans where they wipe their credit out and then their credit cards have no balance and they just now have a loan and they build their credit card balance up again. So we've got to deal with, are you never, we're cutting up the credit cards? What are we doing? Are we going to cash only and you're going to pay this off? So it's not as simple as it seems. It's a complex issue that we have to deal with. The underlying reason why you've gotten here. And it could just be that you went to college and you've got to do, that kind of thing, and you're trying to get yourself out of it. But sometimes it's just a pattern of spending that if they clear that debt, they're going to spend it again.
Yeah, very true. And I think all of our conversation has been dancing around the premise of your book, Poor by Choice, where if we think about it, a lot of the things we have talked about it, if you relate all of those things to the title, it's we are making choices that are keeping us poor, whether it be that we are not investing properly, we are using credit cards incorrectly, we are not managing our money, we are choosing to forego immediate gratification for long-term financial freedom. We can go down the list of everything. And I always ask one of the things to start off, because the books, I'm sure, is going to talk on many different aspects, many different points. What is the driving point that you want people to immediately understand when they open up the book?
So Poor by Choice is kind of two, actually four definitions, but two. Poor by choice, you're choosing, or it's your circumstance. You have like extenuating circumstances, whether it's illness or a death in the family or whatever, or that you're choosing to hand over your power, which was I handed over my power in my marriage. So that's the one thing. The second thing is I want people to know is that my book is based on 3 pillars: awareness, information, and support. I want people to know that they're not alone, because so many people, Michael, think that they're the only ones that have the issue, the problem, the debt, whatever it is. And because they don't talk about it or get support, they stay stuck in the problem. There are solutions, and there is support, and there is information. So you really have to, want to tackle the problem, but people don't because of all the underlying issues. So I want them to know they're not alone, and there is support and help. The other thing is that they don't have to be an expert, that this is not, high-minded science. It's basic math.
Yes. And some schools are adapting it today where they're teaching children, hey, let's learn about this. So it's not anything like it's so complicated like calculus or anything. It's just something you have to bring some focus, like some attention, some focus to. And looking at the first pillar, awareness, is it more so looking back at the 4 levels, like society, community, family, and business, or is it something different?
Yeah, it's something different. So there's 3 levels of awareness. You're asleep, you don't know what's going on, you're paycheck to paycheck, Then you become aware because something usually happens. So that something could be good, Michael. It could be a marriage or a birth of a child or a new job, or you listen to this podcast. So, oh my goodness, I'm like, I've got to do something. But for most people, it's negative. Something happens and they're like, I got to get it together. So, and then once they become aware, they can start proactively stuff we're talking about here, learn about investing, learn about their mindset, learn about the 4 levels, and begin to, in the awake stage, you're proactively, maintaining things that you've learned and implemented. Like when you went through your issue and you're like, okay, I got burned and now I'm learning and now I'm moving forward. So that's what that awareness piece is, becoming aware of your situation and how you can move from it.
Yeah, very good. Now the information aspect, is it more so of learning about being financially literate, learning from mentors, learning about what our money can do? Because if you think of, like, for example, you know about this 529, right? You know what that is.
Yes.
I don't have to say anything else,
Nope.
what it does, right?
You say
Right? We know
529,
what
I'm
we're
like,
talking
yep.
about. Right, we know what we're talking about. Everyone's 529. What's like an area code? So now we have people who don't even know what is available to them, like the assets, the tools, the information. Right. So where would someone begin there?
I mean, that's a section of my book is like the 5 to 6 major money categories: saving, spending, investing, credit and debt, and building your financial team. So, it's just a chapter of my book on investing, and it goes through, these are the vehicles of investing. This is what, people are like, what's a 401k and IRA? Those are, you know what I mean? But I lay it out in very simplistic terms. Those are personal retirement accounts. You can't just put money in the bank if you're not working for a 401, an IRA, or, you know what I mean? So people just basic information that they can learn. And there's actually a quiz in that front of that part of the book that says, you go through in the different categories and judge where you are. And then that's the chapter to start on first. So, that basic information, I actually think people go to the internet. There's almost too much information on the internet because you can get yourself confused if you don't even know what you're looking for. So I would say, books like mine, you can take even at your local credit union or bank. They're always giving financial wellness. If you can, learn financial wellness topics. Many of them are available at libraries and, simple ways you can do that, but you've got to get the basics. This is just the basics, savings and how it works. And I talk about compound interest and give an example of, like, if you invest now for 10 years versus wait 10 years and then have, and I show a scale where the person that invested for, I think it was $1,000 for 10 years, the person that started 10 years later never caught up over the next 30 years. And that person didn't have to put any more money in, and they had more money than the person that was keep feeding it because of compound interest. So there's examples in there. So they need to learn about the basics: compound interest, saving, investing, credit, and debt, because people, they don't understand.
Which would you say is the most important? I know I'm sure you get this question a lot. Like, which one is maybe the main focus people should be looking at? And it could be situational, but in your opinion, if someone could do this, they can most likely find their way out as a win.
So that really depends on what what's going on with them. So it is kind of situational. You mean with like savings versus investing, or saving versus paying off debt, or just what to do and where to start?
Yes. So kind of looking at all the information. So whether it be like credit, spending, investing, like where should the focus be? And again, if someone has money, then maybe they should be focusing on investing, maybe saving, things along those lines. If they have a lot of debt, of course, we're looking at paying that off. Like this is more so of the, like the basic way of, or the fundamentals. But if you just could tell someone, hey, if you focus on this kind of thing. So for example, in weightlifting, they say 70% of being in shape is what you eat. So yeah, sure, going to the gym is 30%, but if you can focus on just eating well, then you can find yourself ahead of a lot of the people. So if we can say maybe one kind of can take the cake, even if it's just a percent or two higher, which one should be paramount in someone's thinking?
I use what I call a high level or six numbers spending plan, and it kind of covers all of it. So the first number is your income, simple as what's coming in. It can be this simple, Michael: what's coming in and what's going out, and where is that going? So income, and then what are you spending on? Necessities. That's a thing. If you do Dave Ramsey, that's the 4 walls. It's the things that you got to live, the home, the car, the, food, shelter, that kind of thing. And then what's the savings we're doing? Saving and investing is one number. Do I need to spend on education? What is my self-care, play, whatever? So there's 5 or 6 numbers that I would start there, because you can actually deal with, here's what's coming in, here's what's going into necessities. How much do I have left over? Now I can start thinking about what I want to do with that. That's a really good place to start, is just what's going on in my current situation.
Yeah, definitely. You want to
What's
do
coming
a
in, what's going
inventory.
out.
Yes,
Yes.
you want to do an inventory of what you have, what you don't have, what needs to be
Exactly.
there. Yes, so important.
Because a lot of people don't even know how much money they're spending.
But what about Rocket Money? What about Rocket Money? Doesn't Rocket Money do that for you?
They probably do.
Yeah, I don't know how well it is. I don't have it, but it's an app that
I don't
apparently,
either. I don't either.
yeah, it apparently is an app, and I'm not sponsored by them, but if you want to sponsor me, sure. It's an app where people can go sign up, and then they'll, I guess, look at all of their
It pulls all their
spendings,
data.
and they'll use all their data to figure out what subscriptions they have that they might have forgotten about. So maybe they have an old Netflix account they don't use. Maybe it's a gym membership, whatever it is, right? So they'll find
Right.
all the subscriptions or the plan or the payments that happen in a reoccurring basis. So a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't even know this money was going out, right? I thought I dealt
Right.
with that, because they don't look at their money. And it's kind of like going back to what
Right.
I said early on. A lot of people don't want to look at their money, right? So they're
Exactly.
like, I want to be hands off. I don't want to worry about that. And so this is why I think a lot of people, they ask for the support aspect. Like, I want somebody to support me, but I think their support that they're looking for is basically like a parent. I want you just to handle it, right?
Yeah, no.
My kids, they don't have to worry about money. Of course, one day they will, but it's very, that child mindset of, can you just do this for me? But there comes a power in doing it yourself and understanding what you're making, what you're spending, and then what you could be working toward, like the dream aspect of, let's get to this, right?
Absolutely.
And it's the same aspect as like our goals, where we can work toward a goal, whether it be a better body, a better mindset, a better career. Like if you want to be from, a supervisor to a manager to CEO, right? We know those steps. But then when it comes to looking at ourselves for retirement, I think a lot of people maybe are even afraid to say, retirement, what am I going to do? I'm going to be old. I can't walk anymore. And I mean, there's just so much fear there. I think they would
Right. That they don't
rather
want to go there.
not bring any attention to it, because a lot of people, I think where we talked about already is, whether you have money or whether you don't have money, there's that fear there of not having enough, or having enough and then losing it all.
Exactly. And I love to talk to high school students, Michael, because when they teach financial literacy in high school, they teach it at a level where they're not interested. They don't want to talk about FICA. And I mean, my son took high school financial literacy. He's like, yeah, we talked about FICA and me getting an apartment. He was 16. He's like,
Yeah.
I just want a game system. I want a phone. So when I talk to them, I talked about that high level spending, and I go, what are your necessities? You got to bring it home to where they live. What are the necessities in your life right now? So for high schoolers, it's different. Then it's not a mortgage, right? What are your necessities? What is your self-care? What is your entertainment? We look at that, and who's it coming from? Is all that coming from your parents? Is that something you want to get a job for? So having those conversations with people at a level where it meets them where they're at, then it makes sense. Because if you teach them all this stuff and then they can't relate it, then they forget about it, and then they move on, and they're like, they don't remember any of it because it made no sense.
One of the things I like to think about is, if I had started younger investing, and I always like to phrase it this way, framework it this way. If I was given a second chance at redoing my life, right? Just everything, what would I do differently? And I would say, well, of course, the basics. I'll buy Google, I'll buy Amazon stock, I'll buy Disney stock, Nvidia, Zoom. Like I would buy those stocks, right? But then it comes into the play now I can start to do those things, whether
Absolutely.
it's if I was a kid or if I was, now as an adult. It's like, I can buy Amazon stock. I can buy Google stock, right? I can buy Apple stock. So what's holding me back? And it's just that gap of I could have made so much, and people don't see how much they can make if they start investing as well. So
Right.
it's just like they're living this scarcity mindset of I already lost this much rather than I can gain this much. And so my question to you is, if you were a younger self or you were your former self, what is one thing you would have done differently? And of course, it could be buy stocks and things like that, or it could be not buy candy like me. But what was something that you would have done differently?
I probably would have started investing earlier. Yeah, for sure. But I'm probably a lot older than you. Older than you. So yeah, when I started working in 1982, I don't even think they had 401ks. I don't even think they had a vehicle like that for investments. But I wish I would have even done regulars, gotten in. And I'm not sure the financial planning industry started. It probably started around then. But I would have gotten more involved in, saving more money. Definitely.
And would you have focused more on individual stocks, mutual funds?
Probably at that time, it would have been individual stocks. And then I would have moved, more into mutual funds. But yeah, I would have learned definitely, if I had to do it, if I had to do it over again, when I went to school, they didn't have a finance degree. I would have gotten a finance degree. For sure. And gone into financial planning and advising, because I have seen it change so many people's lives. And I don't even I have a financial advisor because, of course, CPAs, and I always say all accountants are not created equally. And, financial advisors are totally regulated completely differently than CPAs. So to find one that does that and tax is very rare. But I see the benefit that they've given me and lots of people I've said them to. I mean, it's life changing. You can change somebody's life if they get to a financial planner early, and get set up. They really can. So I would probably have changed my major. I would not have probably gone into accounting. I probably would have gone into finance.
Yeah, I started business finance accounting for my college. And then I basically did it for 2 years, internships, working at Sikorsky. And I said, I'm going to be miserable if I do this for the rest of my life. So I became a teacher and loved every minute of it. But then eventually I wanted to create a bigger impact, more than just a classroom of 30 kids or a school of 500 kids. I said I wanted to do something more global. Of course, I could have started a podcast later down the road, but I knew there was a lot of issues happening with the children when they were leaving. I said, the question was, are you ready for the real world? And I said, you are not ready for the real world, but it's not my job to keep you here, to make sure that you're ready for the real world. Of course, it's your parents' job, it's your job to make sure that you're equipped with everything. But I just started to see all of the gaps that were going to be in the future. So I said, how can I help fill those gaps? And I'm just one person, right? I'm just focusing on the mindset aspects of how a person can think in their day. And then the work that you do is the financial aspect of how someone should be looking at their finances and retirement and investing. Like, that's another important thing that they have to start to look at. So there's just all of these coaches and people that are there to help fill in the gaps. And a lot of people are just living in New Jersey, driving on these bumpy roads. And I'm over here saying, why are you living that life, right? Right now, you can look at your situation, be completely honest with yourself. If you look in the mirror, if you look tired, don't say, well, I'm wide awake. Just say, maybe I should rest a little bit, right? So just be honest with yourself. Be honest with your finances. Be honest with your mindset. Be honest with yourself, just to some level, to some degree. And I think that's where the true work begins, because when you can say that you want change and then you commit to it, that's one thing. A lot of people, they want to change, but they won't commit to it. So if you are a person today that is saying, I can commit to some change, whether it be mindset, whether it be your finances, whether it be just your own personal development, then I encourage you to take some level of action today. And today we are talking about finances. So let that be one of the first things that you do. One of the things I love to do, Estelle, is to let people know how they can find you, reach out, get your books, like, so they can start at least, because I think starting is the most important part. Like, yeah, sure, you can
Absolutely.
listen to the episode, you can listen to the podcast 50 times, But if you don't start to take some deliberate action besides the play and the replay button, you're just going to stay in that loop. And right now we're trying to get to the next level, not stay at where we are. So if you could, can you tell people how they can find you, where to get your book, your resources? And then after that, if you could, instill with us something that we could walk away from this episode with and say, wow, this is life-changing.
Okay, perfect. So they can reach me at estellegibson.com. And if you go to the tab that says podcast, there's free resources, ways to get in touch with me, information about my book, my TED Talk. So one page, all the information is there. And then what I want to leave, you just basically touched on it. I have a quote in the book that says, information without implementation is entertainment. So take something that you heard here today and in the next, even if you share it with somebody in the next 24 hours, what's one thing that you can do? Whether it's, write down what you're spending today, what's coming in, what's going out. Think about the 4 levels that we talked about. Anything in this podcast, pick one thing that you're going to move forward, take an action or implement or share with somebody and begin to move yourself forward.
Beautiful. And I just loved our conversation. It has flowed from so many different aspects, so many different paths. And it's just so funny. I always talk to people about this. It's like, we don't know what we're going to get when we hit record. But what I do know most of the time when I'm starting the conversation is that, wow, we're going to have a great conversation. One that's going to be memorable, one that's going to be life-changing. And this is definitely one where you're going to remember it. It's going to change your life. It's just a simple application on your end if you really want to make some headway in your life. So if you have dreams and they're big dreams, keep dreaming, keep envisioning it, and keep planning for them. So don't just say that this dream is just something I can never reach. Just give yourself this idea that it is possible, even if it's just that 1% right there. Take it. And then every single day, increase that to 2% to 3% until you're damn near 90%. You're like, now I know 100% is possible. And if you can believe it, you can achieve it. Napoleon Hill said that. So right now, I want you to believe in your healing, believe in your finances. If you're in a large amount of debt right now, believe that you can get through it, and don't do it simply to be the hero by yourself. Seek some help, seek a mentor, seek a guide, seek a financial advisor, seek someone who's going to not only be there to support you and to believe in you, but then to guide you so you don't have any more shortcomings in the end. If I had a financial advisor when I received my $12,000 from my car accident, man, I'll be in a different place right now. And it's so funny because I started investing when I was 18 in mutual funds. Yeah, it was all through Fidelity, all through my work. So I was just around the right people at the right time to do that. And I know not everyone.
Most people are not doing that, Michael. They're not.
My financial advisor said this. He goes, I wish I was 18 when I started. I said,
and you can start. So your listeners that are parents, your kids can start. If they're working a summer job, there is such a thing as custodial Roth or regular IRA. You can start them investing now. All they have to be doing is working.
Mm-hmm. And if you have a business, you can make them an employee for up to what, like
absolutely
like 12. It's like 13,000 or something now. Or
I'll have to look at that. I thought it was 3 or 5, but I need to know that number. But you can definitely put them to work in your business and pay them.
Pay them, tax write-off. There we go. There's so many little things you can figure out, and it's a lot of information. So don't be overwhelmed. Don't do it by yourself. Reach out to Estelle. Her links are down below. And Estelle, thank you so much for our conversation today. It was truly an eye-opening experience, not only for me, but I'm sure for all the listeners today.
Thanks for having me.